All right, everyone. I just want to remind you we're recording this call. So, if you have any objections to being recorded, this would be a good time to drop off. And this is our very first Future of Coming Together Ideation Hub calls. For those of you who are, core team members, we're delighted to have you with us. And for those who are listening in or doing the fishbowl, we're delighted that you have an opportunity to participate real time or listen to this later on. And you have my thanks. Every one of you have my thanks for being interested in this topic. Future of Coming Together is an interpretation of the core spirit of what I created with Jemae Bliven, the distributed process and practice. And so I want to invite Jemae to say a few words about how she feels about the distributed mission. We're going to have time for all of us to introduce yourselves to each other, but Jemae is putting it right here to work, right, for the Close It Distributed conference. So Jemae, why don't you share a few thoughts about what you think about the future of coming together in distributed?
You bet. Hi, everybody from Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm founder of Innovate to Educate, which is national nonprofit, and the Close It Summit. So Close It was a summit that I've done for 7 years. The 8th year, Kevin and I came together to develop Distributed, which is Distribute Ed, ED, really hoping to create a new environment for coming together. And that's what you all are going to help us do with this working group. With Distributed, the conference that I'm running, I'll just quickly highlight we have 11 different hubs working. So we have all of this distributed work happening across the
Mhm.
country around big themes in the future of work, which distributes the work, distributes the knowledge, allows people to join when they can. We really hoped to come together in May. It was going to end after 7 months with a final event. That's not going to happen this year, which is why distributed is good.
Well, we
It's
will have an event. It just will be
Mhm.
online. It's
It'll
not
be
going
on.
to be in person. All right. And one of the things that we co-created are the 14 hubs that are meeting right now. This is one of them. Others have been meeting pretty regularly, prior to this time on a variety of topics, all focused on primarily education and things that are related to practices, methods, and ways to reinvent future of work. And you have some pretty great sponsors, Jemae, sitting behind all of this. You've got Pearson, AT&T. Um, who else have you got lined up?
Stride, K12.com, Stride, SCIC. What's
Mhm.
interesting is the outcomes that are going to happen from this because it's distributed. We've got one person paying us to run a national virtual internship fair as part of the
Mhm.
conference. So we are going to be working with over 50 companies to hire summer interns. That all came out of this distributed model.
Mhm.
So, I mean, as Kevin and I talked through what happens with distributed, it really creates new lines of work, new ways to think about things versus a 3-day conference where everybody's just like, "Give me your card, love it, let's meet, let's everything," and then you leave and it's over.
So we call this flipping the conference, just like flipping the classroom, right? And uh, no one is in the audience, right? And the reason we say that no one's in the audience is that everyone has speaker on their badge, right? We're creating content now, and when we come together, uh, everyone will be delivering the content that they've created inside their ideation hub. So that's exactly what's going to happen here. We're all on stage collectively in May when the virtual Close It distributed conference takes place. So I'm going to go around. I'm going to call on folks. If you could just provide a brief who are you? What keeps you active and interested? You can do that avocation or vocation, your pick. And I want to hear, what is the one thing that you like to do when you get a moment to yourself, right? So I'm going to start with Kristen Little because Kristen is on our distributed advisory board, and we're delighted to have you with us, Kristen.
Okay, well, I'm delighted to be here, so thank you. So let me see, who am I? I'm Kristen Little. I am coming currently from IEEE Standards Association, and I work there as their public affairs senior manager. And I'm basically creating a bi-directional bridge between policymakers and technologists. So that's been exciting, doing that globally and looking to start conversations on that front and help understanding. I was also the People-Centered Internet's Digital Cooperation and Diplomacy Fellow, which was also quite interesting, looking into how we can all talk together about governance issues and the like. So that's the first two. And then one thing I like to do when I'm not doing all of that is, I would normally say photography, but this time I'm going to say I am creating something akin to the Little Free Library, but it's called the Little Free Art Gallery. And I'm hoping to create connection in my community by putting up this little thing that I'm building. It's like a little art museum that I designed and I'm building along with one of my sons. And there will be little people, a little bench, and 3 pieces of little art. And if you come and you want to take a piece, you're welcome. Just leave a piece. So
that's fantastic.
That's me.
I love it. We're going to thank Chandra Storiston for joining us because she completed the Hollywood Squares look, all right, for Zoom, right? which is fantastic. I love it. It is. It is important. Next, I go to Kyle Shannon. Kyle's joining us from Denver. Kyle?
From sunny Denver. Hey, everybody. Real pleasure to be with you. Good to see you all. Hey, Todd. Good to see you, sir. I am the co-founder and CEO of a company called Storyvine, which is a pro user-generated video platform. Our mission is to democratize video storytelling. We've been around for almost 9 years. It'll be 9 years in May. Kevin has been an advisor essentially from day one. And we've been meeting weekly for most of that time. So first of all, thank you for your continued support there. But we spend a lot of time talking about the value of video storytelling. And one of the things Storyvine does well is asynchronous video. So people can record content on their own time. It's produced and it can be shared, and viewed on other people's time. So the whole thing of getting people connected for a Zoom call, I think Storyvine might offer another opportunity to do some time shifting in those conversations, but still capture things powerfully. There's also something about Storyvine is an interesting, it captures qualitative content, so stories, but does it in a very data-rich way. So when you're capturing content and putting that in a database in a structured way, there's all sorts of possibilities of what you can do with that content. And so I think there's potentially something there we can play with as well. So really excited to be a part of this.
Well,
fantastic. And something I like to do on my spare time, similarly a photographer, but that was in the before time, when we could go out. I am a curious person, so I tend to spend a lot of my spare time like learning new things. My most recent is I've been learning about NFTs, non-fungible tokens, which are basically, think of them like digital trading cards. So I've actually turned a couple of my photographs into these NFTs, which are tangible, sellable things. So it might be a way for digital artists to be able to get their work out there in a way that it can be traded and traded as a collectible. So I'm kind of curious about that kind of stuff lately.
Well, that's great. Kyle, thanks for being with us. I'm just going to tell for those of you who know me, when I spend downtime, I'm a chef, right? I got a chance to train in a fine dining restaurant. I love to cook. I just turned out the New York Times tartiflette recipe that was, in the over the weekend, and I'll tell you, it's really fattening. All right, but it was great. It was really good. All right, so I recommend it. Josie Ann, it's good to see you. You're joining us from San Francisco today, or some other place on the planet?
I'm actually very limited in my traveling like everybody else. So I'm in San Francisco.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't traveled much either. So I'm Josiane Marine, and I've known Kevin for a very long time, even though I haven't been very present with these all these efforts recently in the past couple of years. I'm the co-founder of a company called World Meetings Plus. We're a boutique meeting company based out of San Francisco. And of course, things have changed tremendously in the past couple of years for us, moving everything to virtual essentially and not traveling. So what I focus on mainly now with the company, I've been super lucky. We have as a company been very, very lucky because we've been able to stay extremely busy, even though the business has changed so much. We have moved everything to virtual events, and I've been able to learn a tremendous amount about the different platforms available and how to keep your attendees interested and how to still deliver the best possible experiences. So so the company is still doing well, and I personally focus on our main client, which is IBM, and I work pretty much exclusively for them now. We have just so much going on because I focus on IBM research out of Yorktown. So especially the quantum division. So quantum, Qiskit, the software, the hardware and the software part of it. So we've done a tremendous amount, and especially since we've been virtual, a tremendous amount of hackathons and all sorts of client open houses and things like this. So really, really focusing on of course, on the virtual experience and how to make this with as many networking opportunities as possible, as much education. We do a lot of educational events. So that's been my focus the past 2 years. So it's keeping me super, super busy, even though very stable here in the San Francisco area.
I just want to tell you something. The only reason that I could run 17 membership organizations at IBM, advisory boards and councils, is because between my office and World Meetings Plus, especially Josie Ann, it was like a 2-cycle engine, right? She took away all of the logistics problems so I could focus on content, right? So thank you, Josie Ann.
You're most welcome. And that's still what we do. That's still what we really focus on. Really, really trying to do all the behind the scenes so that our clients and speakers and attendees only have to worry about everything that has to happen perfectly, or as perfectly as possible virtually. So there's enough challenges there. We're trying to take all that backstage thing away from them. So still very good at that, still doing really well. So I'm very happy about this. Lots of really good stories about what we've done lately. So very happy about that too. And what I do when I'm not working is nothing that requires my brain to work, because I find those virtual events to be super demanding and actually harder than what we do face to face. You cannot just walk down the hall and go to the conference room and change something backstage with the AV team. So I'm finding it so demanding that I actually love to be outside as much as I can when I have a few minutes. And I'm lucky because I'm not in San Francisco proper. I'm in a little town called Brisbane by San Bruno Mountain, and I actually can safely bike to the bay. I can hike up that little mountain, so I can have all the outdoor experience I want. So I'm doing really great.
Okay,
on that
we're all
front.
coming to visit when they take the restrictions off. we're coming over.
It's a cool little space. I can tell you, it's a little gem.
Yeah, you and Irene have good lifestyle. So next, inviting Todd Hoskins to introduce himself. Todd, it's great to have you with us.
Yes, and it's fun to see Kyle and Kristen and Chandra, and I think I have heard stories, or at least Kevin mentioned the name of everyone else here. So pleasure to meet you, the rest of you. My name's Todd Hoskins. I'm in southwestern Michigan, about 2 hours northeast of Chicago. Those are the sand dunes of southwest Michigan behind me. The lake is right behind my head. And I started a firm called Canopy Gap 12 years ago. We do work in the field of organizational design. So how do you work together more effectively and relate more effectively? What keeps me interested in that field is dynamics, team dynamics. So the relationship between structures and how the structures change, and then how do you have an energized team moving in the same direction. And outside of working, I too, like Josiane, even in the winter, spend at least an hour outside every day. In the warmer months, 2 to 3 hours. I'll often take phone calls or even some video calls outside. It's good for my soul. And when I'm inside, I'll try to every day tango dance. My wife and I are intermediate level tango dancers, so we've gotten to dance just by ourselves with no milongas for the last year. We've actually gotten better in the last year, not being around other tango dancers.
Wow, that's great. Todd is a member of our sense mapping practice too. He's a valuable contributor there, and because of his organization design skills, gives us a good starting point for understanding the organization first before we externalize their capabilities into the world. So it's great to have you with us. Brian Setzer. Hello, sir. You're nearby, but you are all over the world. Tell us what is going on in your world.
Yeah, good to be with everyone. So prior to COVID, I had spent a career in K-12 and higher ed, with the intersection of innovation and technology being a big focal point. So from 2007 to 2011, led the North Carolina Virtual Public School. What that meant is a pretty large platform nationwide for helping students and teachers and leaders with how to go virtual or how to go blended. So even before COVID had all of the challenges that presented folks with many scenarios from March 1st forward, I founded a group called Setzer Group in January to start working at the intersection of future of learning and future of work. So you can imagine when March 1st hit and everybody needs strategies to do both of those things well, things got really intense for us. And so we had a really interesting 2020 around providing advisory services for people who were trying to reimagine their business model, their academic models through the lens of blended, hybrid, virtual services, products, new models they were gestating, or in some point reopening or reimagining what they could be. So what's happened recently is that all of our consulting services, all of our design services, all of our building services are now being pushed upon for what happens when we come back, and what does that version look like, and how much of it do we keep from what we learned during COVID, how much of it do we transition, and what should we never go back to. So this whole next normal conversation is really tied into all of what you all shared, because I think we care about, you know, the human experience through all of that. So when I think about what I've seen over the last year, some of it feels like 2007 all over again. And then what I mean by that statement is, for me, that was my introduction to working virtually, and I've never been back. And so I find myself talking to a lot of people who are in the 70% who kind of are experiencing all this for the first time. There's that 20% who's kind of incrementally trying new things. And then there's the 10% of the mavericks, like on this call, that I would prefer to work with. So that's kind of where I find myself these days. As far as spending time, man, it's been a while. I've got 4 kids, and my 2 kids on soccer weekends. That's a lot of fun because I lose myself in that. But if I could do anything for personal time, it would probably be golf, only because I'm not great at it, but boy, do I not think about anything else while I'm doing it. So it's one of the rare times with my older son that I'm really relaxed. So how's that, Kevin?
It works. I have to do the same thing when I'm skiing. I'm an avid downhill skier. If you think about anything else other than skiing, all right, you're going to hurt yourself, right? So I get you. I like it. And you know what a great economy for Setzer Group to emerge into, all right? Because you know the need for who you are, you know, has been really great. Chandra Storiston, glad to have you with us. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Kevin. Glad to be here. Great to meet everyone I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet. And hello to everyone that I have, which is most of you. So I co-founded Visible Value back in 2003, which Kevin renamed, and Jim Qualick, who I'm sure many of you know, rebranded in 2014. And I serve as CEO and Chief Value Creation Officer. And we really focus on helping organizations really foster sustainable value creation strategies so they can capitalize on pivotal opportunities during growth and transitions and transformations like many of our clients are in now. So we've stayed very busy helping them evolve their business models, organizational structures, client employee experience, as well as their goals. And I've known Kevin since 2010. And I also worked together with him in Platform UX, which Kevin is CEO of. And in Platform UX, we really help clients focus on what they do exceptionally well and then making it available for others in a technology-enabled platform. So really exciting and a great time to be doing that. When I'm not working, like Kevin, I spend a lot of time cooking, also painting and photography. And my husband and I are trying to both get better at golf. And now that the weather's broken, I think we'll spend a lot more time at that. We're also trying to explore dancing. Unlike Todd and his wife, we are nowhere near getting to tangoing, but we're starting with the baby steps. So maybe we can have a conversation about tango next year.
All right, fantastic.
That's fun.
And Tiffany Delgado, delighted to have you with us. Please say hello.
Hi there. I apologize. I'm in my car. I am coming back from Philadelphia, so hopefully I have a good enough connection where y'all can hear me. I actually started my career in workforce development, and then through work with DistirbutED and kind of transferring over to the world of nonprofits, I was really exposed to the world of employment and education technologies. And so that's really where I step in for a little piece of this is, you know, graphic design, a little bit of UI UX. And I'm honestly here to learn whatever I can from all of you. Really taking that from in-person to virtual or hybrid models. I am a lifelong learner who honestly spends their free time learning. Jamae can definitely attest to that. In any way, shape, or form, I like to get my hands on it and learn as much as I can. So thank you very much for having me here.
We're delighted to have you with us. Please be safe. That was a high-risk introduction from my point of view.
I'm almost there, don't worry.
All right, Jamae, tell us what you like to do in your downtime as we come into the home stretch.
Well, yoga's my life. And I took up golf last year and I'm addicted. So my goal this summer is to shoot below 100. I really love golf, and my husband is a big golfer. So now that our kids are grown, we have one left that's going to be a senior in high school. I'm just really into golf.
Okay, fantastic. And we have an observer, Kyle Albert, and we're delighted to have you with us, Kyle.
Hello. Yep, just observing today. Just I drop in between meetings, but just to introduce myself. Yep. Yeah.
As I said in the note, Kyle, If you find the discussion interesting and want to join this group, you just write to me afterwards, right? But we're
And
delighted to have
Kyle-
you looking into the fishbowl.
Yeah, Kyle is with GW. Kyle, help me, GWU, George Washington University.
Yes,
Yeah, and
that's correct.
yeah, and I think you'll be a great addition if this seems interesting. So good to see you.
Yeah,
Yes,
we're
that's
glad to have you
it's
with
very
us.
interesting. Yeah, thank you.
All right, so we have all the puzzle pieces on the table, all right? As you can tell, this is, from a professional point of view, a pretty diverse group that has come together to understand the future of people interacting and coming together in the future. I'm going to unpack just a couple of things that we've that kind of set the table, which is from a human interaction point of view, Jemay and I agree that conferences, events, meetings, and trade shows can be on a spectrum of either completely in person, the way that we've seen them, or completely online. We don't like the word virtual. We prefer distributed because virtual puts the technology first. We're trying to put people first, right? So that's a core principle of, of coming together from our point of view, is use the technology as an enabler. Don't make the technology the star. The next is that there are in-betweens. We don't see this happening right now, but we think it's possible that groups of people could come together in groups of 10 to 20 in a city or within driving distance of each other, and that the conference ballroom that used to have 2,000 people could be cohorts of 20 people in 50 different locations, and that they would be connected by technology. You'd have some of the intimacy of face-to-face, and perhaps the advantage of the people who are coming together are people that you could continue to know because they're in your region, right? As opposed to they're from all over the world. But yet you get the global connectivity of being able to do this. The hotels and meeting facilities that are suffering right now because they don't have that catering and ballroom rental revenue could benefit from writing contracts, master contracts from their headquarters, the Sheratons, the Marriotts, the Fairmont, whoever, that they would be able to write one contract and put all those 50 facilities together for someone and get some catering revenue and some other things going. So we see that in the future. It's not happening yet. And what we want to do is tap into your thinking. For instance, what Kyle's doing is, how do we, not only unpackage it from a physical point of view, but change it from a temporal point of view, that maybe it isn't all happening at the same time, right? That there's an asynchronous nature to collaboration. I'm not new to doing this. Having worked for IBM, we were doing, this kind of stuff, I don't know, 25 years ago, almost 30 years ago. We were online. We were doing, a lot of meeting and meeting with people in different time zones. And work would move from one time zone to the next, and there would be handoffs and protocols. We were coding around the world 30 years ago, right? So, that part isn't new. I think it's bringing it into the meeting and coming together world is new. So that's what we want to talk about. We want to kick that off. There are no bad ideas, right? We're in the divergent thinking modality right now. We'll come together with some recommendations that we want to make as we get toward but let's just stay in a completely open frame of mind right now. And let's have a discussion for the next half hour that starts to get some of the big ideas that you may have been considering out on the table. So Brian, I see you nodding. So that nod says I'm going to call on you first.
Okay. So One of the things that I'm seeing is the identification, selection, and engagement prior to events like this or prior to experiences like this.
Mhm.
And when people ask me to join them, be a part of something, the key words are flexibility, nudging and reminding, making it frictionless, because I've been involved in some that are certainly not, and I've been involved in some that are kind of mixed bag and some that are just right. So the first thing I'm thinking about from a brainstorming is when you put this on before and you've had opportunities before on that whole pre-experience process, what do we need to get right and make sure that people want to come, they're excited to come, that it's as frictionless as possible, and they have as many options to participate as we can provide, but also not so many options that we can't monitor or support. So it's an interesting challenge, right? But I want to call that out. And then while they're at the experience, these are people who during COVID are managing kids at home, work commitments, trying to figure out how to join. So one experience that I had years ago, I think it was EdModoCon. EdModo was a LMS platform, and they would do their PD through EdModoCon for 2 or 3 days. And basically they were open-ended. You could join, opt out, return, easily get a recording. It was all of that, right? Now, having said that, people don't listen to full hour recordings. They tend to listen to short, bite-sized pieces of content that can be dosed if I missed it, right? Like maybe something that's like a Loom, Loom, or something that they can very quickly go to a YouTube channel and quickly get caught up if they want to know more with that person, but it's not the full hour. It's like 3 or 4 minutes. I think that in-session experience has the same Goldilocks challenges. Like, what do we all think that has worked, and what do we all not want to repeat? And then finally, when we go to post, how does that whole experience become an ongoing, organic sort of living knowledge capture that if I want to return on Slack, if I want to stay in touch with these people on MS Teams, or I want to have some sort of community, how does that happen? So I'm just kicking off questions right now. I got lots of thoughts, and I'm sure others do, on those 3 buckets of pre-experience, in-experience, and post. But I think we should talk about all 3, if that makes sense.
Could not agree more. And I want to say that Close It Distributed has created, with Tiffany Delgado's help and some intentionality on my part and Jame's, we use the Participate social media platform, which is a white label for us, so that there is a community for the conference, right? And that they will be able to persistently, stay in touch with each other between times of activity. Yes, Brian.
Last thing on that, we recently had a client, the North Carolina Retired Government Association. Everybody on the client side was 75 plus. So one of the areas they identified was moving into technology. And if that sounds like it was daunting, it is, but there was a key lesson in there. In other states who had their organization, the most popular place they congregated was Facebook. And you wouldn't have said that maybe 5 or 6 years ago. But what happened was that was the platform they knew because their grandkids were on it. They had sort of grown up in the last 5 years using it more for good and bad reasons, but they knew how to use it, right? So their experience was good. I think that's a key in this, is drawing and leveraging platforms that we think universally will attract our audience in the easiest, frictionless way. And I'm not saying it's Facebook, it could be several, but let's think about that as we move on.
Okay, I like it, Brian. Kristen Little, what were you thinking about prior to us coming together today? Oh, you need to come off mute.
One day I will get that right. So a part of what I'm doing with IEEE is looking at how we can participate in various different conferences and designing sessions for our experts to be able to talk about issues. So I've been thinking about a lot of ways that generate interest in the moment. I guess that's where my focus has been, because I find it just really awful how so many sessions are run and it's just someone talking and actually reading what they came to say, which just makes me want to shoot myself. So I've been looking at different things like a chain reaction panel where, you know, one person interviews the first person who then interviews the next person who then interviews the next one on a panel, or an Oxford style debate, or a circle square event. I don't know if you guys have heard about that. There's someone who did that. It's kind of a famous thing, but that's in person, but adapting it to be virtual. But now that you've mentioned more about what we'll be talking about, I feel like that needs to open up to something that's less focused on the moment of when people deliver and more on the sort of broader structure. And maybe I didn't understand that. But I was really excited by what you were saying, Brian. I've seen a lot of flexibility in the types of sessions that are being offered. The IGF is talking, I've been in their MAG discussions on how to make things more accessible in many different ways. And also I think RightsCon is doing kind of an interesting approach to having, you go in and you can see many different options, and it tells you, like, for instance, I think RightsCon is one of the more straightforward. It shows you the different options for how to join and how to present. One is the typical panel, one is kind of a knowledge cafe idea, others are pre-recorded. You can just Google RightsCon, it's a pretty good example. But I don't know. I really liked your idea of staying in touch after the fact as well. Something that just automatically puts you into a group. I've had this experience. It was now long ago, actually. We were automatically put into a Facebook group, I think. And to this day, I think there are still people talking in that group. And I have to say that was probably around 2011. So I don't know. I'm really interested in exploring that aspect of things. So I'm sure there's more, but I was kind of like, I'll add as we go along.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's what we want. That's exactly what we want. I'll just say, I'm going to call on Kyle in a second, is that I just was invited to join Clubhouse, which is this new online, voice community, where it's more like radio, right? Where you can, drop into conversations, and, the randomness of that, and that people invite, you ought to join this conversation, is kind of interesting. It's difficult for me to understand how that wouldn't become just a really bad time suck on my calendar, right? Because
It will.
right. But I think that, if you set aside the time with the people that you want to talk to, or whatever, as opposed to just grazing in there, it'll be interesting. But it's a new experience. It certainly is an interesting experiment that they're involved in. And Kyle, what are you thinking about this? And it sounded like you had some thoughts about, Clubhouse too.
Yeah, there's a couple of areas for me that, over the past year, are painfully missing. One of them is a sense of scale. How do how do you create scale for an online event? Because, you know, CES just happened. And if you've ever been to CES in person, it is a massively overwhelming experience. And, you know, just getting to the venue or venues, right, is an ordeal, right? And you're meeting people and bumping into people. And then, you know, you walk into the Sony booth, and the Sony booth itself is bigger than most conventions you've ever been to, right? And then online, it's like, click here to see Sony products. Like, it's just a hyperlink, right? Like, so,
Yeah.
so how do you, like, so one thing is sense of scale. The second thing that I find is, I feel is a major misstep in a lot of online events. You didn't fall into the trap, Kevin, because you're good at this stuff. A lot of times it's like, okay, here's the panel. Let's start talking. I don't know who the people are on the panel. I don't know who's in the audience.
Right.
I don't like, you know what I mean? Like that when you're at a real event, you have the cocktail party, or you even have the 10 minutes while the tech crew's getting their shit together, while you're mingling with people and meeting the people around you. And you go, okay, these are my people, or these are not my people.
You know who does the best pre-party in the world is Jamae.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
She does a great pre-conference party, and you know all the speakers are there.
Yeah.
And I did it last year. It's great. All right. Yeah. So yeah, there's big value in that.
Yeah, and so what's the digital equivalent of that? And I also, the idea of this hybrid sort of micro events that are connected with technology, I find really interesting. But that idea of designing in time to learn who you're with and who you're hearing from feels important. And then the third thing that has really come to mind lately was to a great degree for me answered with Clubhouse. And so Clubhouse, you can go into these rooms, and, you know, Elon Musk decently famously went into one of these rooms, you know, a while ago, and they had 9,000 people in it. And so some of the rooms are super high profile. And the concept is you have a handful of people on stage, and sometimes they're moderated, sometimes they're not. There's, you know, varying degrees of, you know, skill at that piece. And then there's an audience watching, right? The rooms that I find the most valuable and the most interesting are the rooms with 20 people in them, where I don't know anyone in there, but there's kind of a topic. Everyone in here is coming in to talk about how awesome golf is, or whatever it is. It almost literally doesn't matter, because Clubhouse for me is the first thing since we've been in lockdown that is equivalent to meeting the guy at the airport bar while you're waiting for your flight. That was this magical conversation. And so that idea of scale also in terms of groups, right? You've got maybe a large group if you've got someone very visible speaking, but really designing those smaller breakout groups. And I think, Brian, to your point, kind of pre, during, and post session feels like, you know, there's sort of levels of scale and levels of design interaction that that should happen much more intentionally throughout those three phases.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we know is that we see some efforts at trying to get better at this, but it's that secondary benefit of meeting somebody that you didn't know before you went to the conference, that it's really hard to do that on Zoom. All right. Yep. And so the idea of using some of the technology that you would find in dating apps for connecting people, right, in a purposeful way, who have common interests because they decided to opt into this particular conference topic or whatever, who needs to know each other. Some of the stuff that we've looked at is very rudimentary, right? It's just topic matching, and it doesn't get to the opposites attract, that, you know, the people that really need to know each other, you know, are heterogeneous in terms of their interests, but that they really do need to know each other because of, you know, together, all right, it's like a mastermind group. You know, I put together a whole new cohort of people that I needed to know, and that's missing right now. We don't have a good way to do that.
Even the groups where they've tried to do that, where they'll use Zoom breakout rooms, like, you know, we've done this big thing. Now you go in the breakout rooms, like I feel like the fact that they found breakout rooms is where their thinking stopped. And
I know. Well,
like,
it's technology.
I'll get dropped into a room, and there's no one else in there, and I sit there for 10 minutes going, oh, I guess I am a loser. Or I'll get dropped into a room, there's no topic for it, and it's just an awkward silence.
Awkward.
Yeah, exactly. Like yeah, how do you design that piece? I feel like everything needs to be hyper intentional in this virtual world.
Yeah, because I think I need to know something, more like the dating apps that tell me something about, okay, this is this is the kind of person it is. This is this is the kind of relationship that I want to have. And that would, we need to go find out if we can borrow a cup of sugar, right, from, that tech. You're nodding your head, Todd. What do you think?
Oh, I have so much to say, and I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything about Clubhouse. If anyone wants a bearish perspective on Clubhouse, reach out to me because I think it's doomed to fail.
I think it probably will too. We would probably agree on a lot of that, but it's going to be an interesting moment in time.
I
Right?
don't even know
Yeah.
what Clubhouse is, but let's not go
I'll
there.
get you an invitation, Jimmy.
Yeah.
All right.
I wanted to hate it more than I did.
Go ahead, Todd.
So if we take the flipped conference, going back to that idea, and the old model of the conference is about there's an assumption that it's highly produced and professional. And so part of the flipping is to make it highly intimate and interactive, not with the technology, but with people. And I think that the missing piece of that, which you're just getting to in the conversation, is facilitation. Like, what would be ideal is when you go into all those breakout rooms, you have people who just have some at least light training in how to facilitate the conversation that moves things forward, that connects people, that understand just how that works. I think that's key. And I also, part of facilitation is there's some guiding of experience without telling people what their experience is going to be. And so even if you think about the cocktail party or the cocktail hour at a conference, part of the guiding of the cocktail hour is that you have a bar that you walk up to and get drinks, you wait in line, you have a conversation there. Then you have round tables, you go stand by a round table. That's part of the guiding, is that there's structure to that. And so being able to, I think the scale happens when you can actually give intimate experiences to people. And I'm on the same page, Kevin, with there needs to be some similarity and dissimilarity. And I think there's a lot of room for how that can be worked out. And one of the experiences that I had that changed my perspective on possibility was the first ULab course through MIT in 2015. So Otto Scharmer had 30,000 people sign up for the MOOC, and they managed to break into, this was before the days of Zoom and breakout groups, they managed to break 30,000 people into hubs of 5. They had geographical hubs, and then you had a work group of 5 people. And those experiences were guided enough, not with facilitation, but there was a task that the group needed to go through. And it was incredibly effective, both in the plenary sessions and then the asynchronous stuff. You had other videos you watched, you had other conversations you were part of, and then having those core groups that grounded everything. I'm not saying that's the thing, but it shows me that there's great possibility there.
That's great. I mean, the potential to recreate, the social media trap of confirmation bias, right, is so, the diverse innovation is based on diverse interaction, right? Not bringing the same people together all the time who have the same mindset. So we need to be able to mix it up. Josie-Ann, what are you experiencing in doing this work? I mean, it seems like you're deep in it right now. What would you like to share as a nugget
Oh
of
my gosh, so many things got triggered by everything that's been said so far. I was like, oh yeah, it's all over the place, but there's so much. It is very, we've used different tools and we try to customize them as much as we can also, but creating all these were super important, very key elements. Creating the interest before making sure that people actually do have a chance to network and know who else is there and get new ideas. So we've done things like, for example, with the hackathons, we always incorporate a team building element where everybody actually introduces themselves, and then they can invite themselves through the platform and communicate and build teams before we even start the work, because then as a team they will start working on a project. So we've tried to do this on other events. It works really well with the hackathons, of course, because they're so goal oriented. They will just say, okay, we just list people have a chance to enter the kind of project they want to work on. Everybody else sees that and say, oh, that project actually I'm interested in. We maximize maximum 6 people. So the first 6 who are interested to that project can join that team. And then that team has their own platform, their own sub area breakout room kind of, where they can work and communicate and everything before they share it back to the whole group. So it's almost they advertise, okay, this is what I want to talk about, and then people grab onto it and say that I'm interested too, can I join your team? And so that's one thing that we've done, and it works quite well. What we do when we do breakouts, so we do also events where, yes, you have a chance to see all these rooms, and I've experienced what Kyle was talking about. You get to a room and there's nobody else, and you're thinking, well, I must really not be interesting because nobody else is coming, or did I pick the wrong room? Once again, it's empty. What we do when we do that is we try to at least have 2 of our speakers in these rooms at designated times. So they only open when we can have 2 people, and we try, but it's super hard to keep it going. But we try to have them at least have a conversation so that when people come, there's at least something going on and 2 people are already there. We've also tried where at any time when we build, and we have, for example, 5 breakouts or 5 areas where lounges where people could go and try and talk. We've tried to do it where one of them was activity oriented, like it would be a wine tasting class or a cocktail making class, because there's always somebody going to these. And that's the best way to attract people and get them to interact. And we always have it where there's enough. It's not too many, so that they can all be on the screen if they want to be shown practicing the recipe or the drink that they're mixing. So we've tried that, and that definitely gets people to know, like a pre-cocktail, pre-event cocktail. They actually get to know each other better, and get to know people they don't know. We've used a tool once that was doing random matchmaking. And they trying to now see, okay, what kind of factor can we actually build this on, so it's actually more useful, because you could get to meet anybody. The way they're doing it is completely random now, but that's as you said, that's really hard, because then they match you always with the same kind of people who have the same interests, and it is good to know people who don't have the same interests at all. That's because that's how you get new, fresh ideas. But right now they're doing it where it's completely random, but you only have 1.5 minutes. You have 90 seconds to be with each of them. You can change that if you want, but it's super short. So it's definitely like the speed dating thing. So you don't really waste too much time if it's someone that you see right away you're really not interested in. But it was an interesting way, that because we are trying to engage that way also. Super important to have people stay in touch and not just have the meeting and then leave. We're using Slack, so we use Slack a lot, and we create a Slack channel every time for that particular community for each of our events. And sometimes we even create one for the breakout. So I mean, I really like Slack, but it's kind of also pretty difficult, because it can get into a situation where you feel like you have all these conversations going at once. It can get pretty overwhelming. But it is something that we create every time for each event. And we try to also host them on platform where they can do the on demand and go back to see exactly the way it was recorded for a year. So usually we try to do that, and then depending on the event, if it can be relevant, then we update the content throughout the year. So once a month or something, we actually reach out and say, hey, do you remember when we did this open house? We now have this huge announcement. Go back, see this session again. That will give you where we were at a month ago, and now listen to this new piece that we've put in the resource list, and they can have access to that. So that's it's interesting. There's definitely, that's why you've got several of these set. I think there's so much to talk about.
Oh yeah, well, there's going to be a lot to
from each
talk
other.
about, and we're coming up to the top of the hour. So what I want to do, not everyone had an opportunity to express themselves. You'll get that opportunity, all right, when we have a full hour on the next call. I want to give you some things to think about, all right? Since this is for an education conference, I'll say it's homework, okay? Your homework is the following, all right? If you know me, in the spirit of what Brian was doing, in his first comments, is I want you to think about a list of words that you want associated with the future of coming together, right? So, give me, your top 10 list of, the keywords that you'd like to see that are going to drive, the future of coming together. And I will also send you a value proposition template. For those of you who are, not familiar, the core of a business model canvas is the value proposition, or, why this is going to be important. And so we're going to treat this as if it were a new opportunity for each of you in the context of your practices or your businesses, or what you need for your constituencies. And so you're going to it's kind of a fill in the blank, all right, view. It's very simple. So I'll send that around, and then we're going to share that with each other and continue in the divergent thinking mode for another call. And then we're going to have some calls where we'll start to categorize, pull it together, and make some recommendations. And then there will be a final call for those of you who opt in. There'll be a fifth call that will be for the people who choose to present at the Close It conference. All of your names are going to be associated with it, but I don't think that we're all going to be presenting simultaneously. Jumay, anything that you'd like to say before we close up?
Really, but I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. It's so exciting as we have such experts thinking about this. And thank you, Kevin, for leading the hub. It's just
you bet.
Great.
It's what I do. All right. So all the best. And we will talk to you in just a couple of weeks. You take care.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.